Hey y'all, how's it going? It's me, Carson. This is what I look like. This is my home. Welcome. So typically, I intend to have all of the discussion stuff in this kind of format. Where I'm here, I'm usually sipping on a tea or a coffee, or if the sun is not out, as in late in the day, maybe a beer. It's all fine. It's all casual, right? And I'm also going to try to keep these around 5 minutes because already I know that sometimes the lectures can go on for a little bit longer than I would like, but that's just the way it shakes out sometimes. So I apologize for that, but what else can we do? So trying to keep this short. So starting now, under 5 minutes. Okay, so the first discussion question, I thought that everyone answered pretty well. Very spot on, very thoughtful, very thorough answers. And the idea here is, and the idea with all the discussions is just to get you thinking. I think that it's best to do them at the beginning of the week. Answer it even maybe before you watch any of the lectures. And then, turn it in and then watch the lectures. And see if your idea changes after watching the lectures. It might be that it does, it might be that it doesn't, and that's totally fine either way. If you do it at the end of the week, that's fine too. Your discussion will be a little bit more informed, I think. So again, you choose how you do it. I don't really care. But this one is very interesting. This one is super interesting, I think, because we're sort of dealing with what is seemingly a small sample size and trying to relate it back to the U.S. population, which I have the number up right here. The number is 328.2 million people live in the U.S. That's a ton of people. That is so many people. And I think our survey sample was like 1,500 or 1,600, something like that. And a lot of y'all were like, okay, 1,600 divided into the U.S. population is less than 1%, right? It is less than 1% of the population. Which is true, right? And that is seemingly very small. But here's sort of the catch. Oftentimes, if you've taken stats before in high school or taken it here or you're retaking it or whatever, you have probably heard that a sample size of 30 is chef's kiss perfect, That's fine. And that is... it's a decent size. It would be representative if you really didn't know what your population really looked like. But for instance, let's say that you were working with like athletes, for instance, college athletes. Then you kind of have an idea of how many other college athletes your results can apply to. Okay. But when you have something like a poll or something like this, where you're just asking for thoughts, oftentimes the population is just sort of this amorphous cloud that we really don't know what it looks like. So no issue there, but that's where that 30 kind of comes from. Now, you also have people who are in the camp of saying if you have, or for every variable or for every question that you're asking, you should have at least 10 observations or 10 people in your study. So if you were running a study and you were only measuring 2 things, that's 20 people, right? It's not a lot. It's seemingly not a lot, okay? But it turns out that it is decent, Same thing with more questions or more variables, the more people you've got. So if you were looking at something and you had if you had 10 questions or 10 variables that you were measuring, that would result in 100 people, okay? So that's fine. That's another rule that we can kind of use. But then you have the opposite end, too. Where some people are like 10, flat out 10, at least 10, and then you're good, And when we get into t-tests and hypothesis tests, which is way far down the line, no worries. But it turns out that we can maybe even go less, which is crazy. We have enough tools and sort of tricks up our sleeves to say that even with a very small sample size, we can do some legitimate analysis to figure out how we can apply this to a population. Now, back to the question. We had 1,000 some odd people in the survey. We've got 328 million people in the U.S. depending on what the survey looks like, if it's open-ended, closed-ended, or even if it was some kind of experiment, most likely, believe it or not, this 1,600 is more than enough. It is more than enough. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what about bias? What about, you might only get one type of person who's answering these questions. That is true. However, something that is unintuitive and just sort of, not, I wouldn't worry about it for this class, but we have this idea of like randomness. So if something is totally randomly sampled, you will randomly get, these extremist people who are very passionate about something. You'll also get an even amount of people who are indifferent, and then you'll get a nice sort of layer or gradient of people in between, just based on this idea of randomness. If your sample is not random, all of that goes out the window, right? You're going to have a biased sample. There's plenty of examples, a lot of y'all brought it up, where if you only watch one news source, then you are going to have a biased view of the world, and you might just be one type of person, who is answering these surveys, right? So there's a lot that goes into it, but the long and short of it, right here in about 5 minutes, is that 1,000, fine. If we got 30 people, that would probably even be okay too, which is wild to me. If you'd like to talk more about it, let's set up a Zoom. I got office hours all the time. But if you feel like you're good, if you feel like you're all set, sweet. If you're watching this on Thursday, enjoy your weekend. If you're watching this on Monday, sorry that it's Monday, go drink some coffee, and I think you'll be all set. So I will see you, I guess, next week. So take it easy.